I'd like for you to imagine for a minute that you're sitting at a table, you're at a nice cafe in Paris, you've got a cup of fresh coffee in your hand, you're eating your favorite breakfast, and you're watching people walk by. People watching can be fun, can't it? We all do it. There's all different sizes and shapes and colors and personalities and voices that walk by you when you're people watching, and it's not a half bad way to spend the morning in Paris. But now let's imagine that somebody that you know walks by. You know their family, you know their dog, you know what they do for a living, you know their sense of humor, you know a lot about this person. Maybe you think that they're funny, or maybe they've got a signature move or a certain walk that you've seen before 100 times. The whole feeling of that scene in Paris just changed, didn't it? Now you expect something. Now you're emotionally invested in the experience. Maybe you're rooting for that person's success. Maybe you really like them and you want to hear what brought them to the city of love. You just transitioned, in this case, from passively watching a sea of people to jumping emotionally into that sea. You're invested now. There's a whole story unfolding here for you now. Now, watching a soccer game is a similar experience. You can either be a passive spectator or you can get so much more out of the game. Today, I'm going to help you get more out of the game. I'm definitely going to help you appreciate this latest Women's World Cup. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the Soccer Sidelines podcast, where we bring parents, players, and coaches together around the stuff that matters.
Before I get too deeply into this episode, I have to give a shout out to Volkswagen this year for sponsoring a series called One Nation, One Team, 23 Stories. You can find this series on YouTube. It's spread out all over the place, along with other related videos that are sprinkled in between, or you can just go out to this week's episode of the Soccer Sidelines, and you're going to find all of those videos stacked neatly together in my show notes. Yes, I did that for you, and I hope that you appreciate the effort. If I'm being honest, I have to say I really enjoyed the process. It took me some time, but each video in the 23 video series features a personal interview with each player that runs about 3 minutes long. And what that means is that in a little bit more than an hour, you can get to know the personal backstories and see the individual personalities of each of these world-class women's soccer players. The interviews are low-key. I even like the lighting that they used. It kind of gave sort of a relaxed and intimate kind of atmosphere. And they give the feeling of being up close and personal with each player. And I guarantee that after you see these videos, you're going to watch the women's national team in a whole new light when you're done. I started collecting these videos for you before the last Sweden game. And then I watched the Sweden game, and I found myself rooting for our women in a way that was similar to the way that I've only rooted for our youth teams that I've coached. I wanted, for example, Rose Lavelle to do well, and I felt inspired myself, knowing that she was inspired by her youth coach. I wanted Crystal Dunn to believe in herself as a player, and I wanted the world to show her how much she really means to the game. I wanted Ali Krieger to love and enjoy her own comeback story, which is really quite remarkable, actually. And I imagined Tierna Davidson dreaming about becoming an astronaut and wondering how she must feel now out there on the soccer pitch playing soccer on the world stage. Now, if you're a coach, you know what I'm about to say. When you know the personal stories of each of the players that are in front of you, you're watching a lot more than the scoreboard during a game. You're rooting for the people and their personal stories. You want each one of those players to be successful, and you realize that success means something just a little bit different for each one. The games that I watched in the lead up to the Women's World Cup literally made me stand up. I couldn't sit down. When Kelly O'Hara got hurt in what I assume was a concussion on Sunday, I felt like I should be running out onto the field and picking her up, just as I've done so many times with my own players. It is gut-wrenching to know that a player that you know is more than a jersey number just got hurt. What I'm trying to say is this: whether you're watching a youth soccer match or a professional game, the more that you know about the players as people, the more likely you are to, 1, respect the game and empathize with the people that are playing it, and that goes for the referees as well. 2, walk away from each game with more than scoreboard wins or losses. And 3, enjoy a much deeper personal emotional ride with every touch during a game. Now, when we come back, I'm going to give you some useful tips for getting up close and personal with your favorite teams and your favorite players in the professional game. We're also going to talk some more about the youth game and how our investment in our young players will not only lead to more enjoyment for us, but it will also lead to better and stronger lasting athletes that go much farther and do more at the end of the day. Hey, Dave Dejewski here. Content creators like me love doing what we do for you. Every week I'm on the microphone, I'm researching topics, writing show notes, linking to resources, and sharing the message that you want to hear. In my case, I'm doing my best to change the culture of youth sports for the better. Bringing this message of what really matters in youth sports takes time and it takes money. Now you can help promote the mission. I've created a Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Soccer Sideline. Patreon is a platform that was designed for musicians, artists, and for content creators like me to connect more deeply with those who most enjoy our content. By giving whatever amount you feel most comfortable, you can help keep the show going and growing. Now, for your convenience, I've made easy-to-understand membership tiers from a $1 per month listener level all the way up to a $50 per month Super Champion member. Every membership level offers you additional benefits from behind-the-scenes access or even a Character Matters Soccer Sidelines t-shirt. We have a private community that you can participate in, and you get to take a more active role in promoting the stuff that really matters in youth sports. Please take a moment to click through to my Patreon page and support the show with whatever amount you feel most comfortable with. Every contribution counts, and I'll be able to appreciate you and maybe find out a little bit more about your personal story with youth sports once you join the community. I look forward to connecting more deeply with you as a patron of the show, and I thank you on behalf of everyone that we can reach with our message of what really matters in youth sports. And we're back. Getting to know our professional players is not an easy thing to do. The sad reality is that most of us are never going to get to meet or to know our professional athletes in our real lives. We watch athletes and celebrities on TV. Maybe we catch a live game, but the men and women that play the sport are busy. Games and practices are when we see them, and that's also the way that they make their living. If Alex Morgan had lunch with every person who called themselves a fan of hers, she'd either be fat or dead and still not get all those lunches in. We have to get to know our favorite athletes and celebrities by either reading or watching interviews. In the case of athletes, we can also get to know them through their stats. More on that in just a minute. The good news is the internet provides plenty of opportunity. Go to YouTube and search for Tobin Heath, and you can spend hours getting to know her. There's so much out there. I think you're going to find her to be an introspective, selfless, competitive, good-natured, and gracious person. She's not just a number 17 jersey when you hear her story. So who are your favorite players? Who are your kids' favorite players? Spend some time getting to know them online. They have personalities and insecurities and strengths and weaknesses. What a great way to have a conversation that can quickly get meaningful when you hear about a professional player, arguably one of the best players in the world, say that they struggled or they suffered setbacks and they kept on going. This is news to some kids. Professional athletes have failed a lot. They've dropped a lot of balls. They've suffered and they've come back from character lapses and personal tragedies. How much more meaningful would it be to have a conversation about that kind of stuff with your kids than it would be to talk with them about the score of some game and passing, or pretend that these people that we see on TV are in any way different from the kids who are growing up today? While you're out there on the internet, also see if you can look at the player stats. In the case of soccer players, what goes into giving them their match score after each game? Passing completions and tackles and passing accuracy and clearances and long balls, all of that stuff matters. It all gets added up. That's how they get their score at the end of each game. That's how the match most valuable player is determined. These stats that we're tracking for professional players are the development goals for youth players, and they still count from youth all the way up to the professional level. As a coach, I'm looking for these elements more often than I am how many balls go into the net. If you can develop an eye for what really matters to soccer players from an individual player perspective, your appreciation of the game goes up exponentially. If your player develops an appreciation for these development goals, their focus changes from trying to be one of those people that always shoots the ball and always tries to put it in the net to maybe improving their passing accuracy or maybe getting better at tackles or some other measurable individual skill. The Women's World Cup would not have been won this year without Becky Sauerbrann's 41 successful passes, 6 ball recoveries, and 5 clearances. It would have been a different game altogether without Samantha Mewis out there winning 9 duels, making 4 tackles, making 10 ball recoveries, and 2 clearances. All of these things matter in the game. And when we know how much they matter, or we have a bar to measure our own performance against, then the focus comes back to the things that really matter in the youth game, developing the fundamentals. Imagine for a moment now if parents jumped for joy when a left fullback on the field won 5 out of 5 tackles. That's a huge accomplishment. That's a game performance worth celebrating. My homework assignment for you is to go out there and get the stats of your favorite or maybe your child's favorite players and start talking about them. Player stats are another more interesting discussion that you can have with your child than what youth team won what game or lost what game. Coaches know what I'm talking about here. Now, I'd like to give you a specific tool for getting to know your professional players. I personally had trouble not watching the Women's World Cup on Sunday. I really wanted to see that game. Though the problem for me was that registration is open for my club for the fall season. And I had hopes that this new company that I just brought in was going to bring us into the monthly membership game. But at the end of the day, they're just not getting the job done, which means that I'm rebuilding our payment processing system while registrations are going on. And that's kind of like changing a tire on a car while it's moving down the road. It's definitely not easy. My son turned me on to this app called FootMob. That's spelled FOTMOB about a year or two ago. And up until today, I've used it to track just scores and standings for teams that I'm interested in. Now, FootMob works great for that, but for me, scores and standings just aren't that important. And I know that's heresy to some people. I'm much more interested in the systems of play that each of the teams are using, the strategies, the players, and the action. Now, this is where things got interesting. Now, before I tell you what I'm about to tell you, I have to disclose that I am not getting a commission or in any way benefiting from endorsing this app or the website. They're just great tools. Poke around just a little bit inside of FootMob. And by the way, I might not be pronouncing FootMob properly. I think that's just what I see when I look at that word. It's not actually spelt FootMob. There's no 2 O's. There's only 1 O in this. It's FOTMOB. Maybe it's FOTMob. I have no idea, but if you poke around inside that app a little bit, you're going to find a game day lineup. You can drill down into that game day lineup. You're going to see the system of play. Both teams, by the way, the Netherlands and the U.S. national team, each used a 4-4-3 system of play. You can drill down in that lineup so you can see where all the players played. You can see who got rotated out. You can see what their scores were for the match. And you can click on those players and you can drill down into each of them to get their individual stats. They even have an element in there called Live Ticker that features a tool that they call Super Live. Now, Super Live, what this is basically, it just looks like an empty pitch. There's goals on either side. It's green. It's lined out properly. And there's a little ball on it. And the ball moves around in real time on this little model pitch as the players from the real team are actually playing the game. It is absolutely wild to see that ball moving left and then right and then left again as the women's national team attempted to penetrate a well-defended Netherlands defense. As a coach, I was mesmerized. I wanted my team to be watching this. I wanted them to see what world-class soccer players are doing with the ball, how the patterns and the shapes were emerging, and how the team strategy seems to just sort of develop as they're playing the game. It's a phenomenal tool. I had such a good time watching that. By the way, I have the game recorded on DVR, and I will definitely be going back there to watch the game with the players in the frame. But for this particular Sunday, I was stuck kind of watching Super Live. I loved it. I loved the fact that it wasn't making any noise, so I could actually concentrate on what I was doing. It only makes noise when there's a score, when there's a goal scored. So anyway, if you get a chance to pick up Foot Mob for yourself, or maybe give it to a soccer player that you know, this is going to make your life a better experience. It's just that good. So go get it. And don't worry if you can't remember the hyperlink that I gave or the name of the app. Everything is laid out and linked to properly in my show notes for this episode. And speaking of this episode, it's time to wrap this up and to let you finish your commute or your workout or whatever else you like to do when you listen to the show. If you like what I'm doing here and trying to move the focus of youth sports back onto the things that really matter, then please consider supporting the show. My Patreon site is waiting for some new patrons. There's a new video that I just posted on the Foot Mob app out there. And it's basically, I walk through how I was using it this past weekend. And your support as a patron of the show is not only welcome and appreciated, but it will get increasingly more rewarding as I get the hang of this and start to push more patron-only content out there just for you. Don't forget there's some resources links out there, and all of the U.S. Women's World Cup 2019 Championship interviews up close and personal with every single player are out there in the show notes. Please go out there, visit it, click through, get to know these players a little bit. They bring a tremendous amount of excitement and fun into the world. I love the fact that the women are up there competing. I hate the fact that they're not being compensated the same as the men. Yes, that is an issue for me. And maybe I'll even make a whole episode about that later on down the road. I want to get my facts and figures correct, though, before I open up my mouth and start talking about it on the show. But I'm sure you understand that. That's a wrap for this episode of the Soccer Sidelines. I love having you as a listener. Please tune in again next week at 6 a.m. as I release the next episode of the Soccer Sidelines. This episode is brought to you in part by the Maryland State Youth Soccer Association and the Damascus Soccer Club, whose mission is character development and fun through youth sports. I'll talk with you again next week as we talk more about the stuff that really matters.